Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today on the HeroQuest restoration project, I'm going to paint the wizard. The wizard in HeroQuest is a little bit unusual. Unlike the wizards we see in many other dungeon crawlers, he's obviously quite young, and if you look at his artwork on his character card, he looks almost like a stage performer. He always seemed to me like a young wizard who had spent his time performing for the royal court and then had suddenly been thrust into an adventure he wasn't prepared for. So I'm going to be painting him a little bit like his character art, and also trying to make him look a little bit like a court jester. So I've started with a Chaos Black primer, and then I'm going to do his hair first by base coating it with Xandri dust. And this will be 2 thin coats over the hair to get good coverage. When that's dry, it will get a coat of Seraphim Sepia, just to add some recess shading. And then I'm going to mix a little Screaming Skull into Xandri dust and do a dry brush over the hair for a final highlight, and that will actually finish the hair on this particular character. And this dry brush is why I'm doing the hair first. It means I don't need to be too careful about getting it over any other part of the miniature. We're now moving on to the face, and I'm going to use Cadian Flesh Tone. 2 thin coats of this over the face, making sure we don't get it in the hair that we've already painted. And then when that's dry, it will get a coat of Reichland Flesh Shade. Again, this will go into the recesses, help to define the features. And then I will go back to Cadian Flesh Tone, and I will pick out the raised details of the face. So Cadian Flesh Tone will go over the lips, the chin, the nose, the cheekbones. It's not absolutely necessary if you're being really quick, but I think it's worth doing. I'm now moving on to Screaming Skull, and I'm going to put 2 coats of this over his tunic. As I said at the start, I'm aiming here to make him look a little bit like a court jester, like someone who performs for the royal court. He is a conjurer of cheap tricks who has suddenly been thrust into an adventure that he isn't yet prepared for, so he looks a little bit foppish. So with the 2 coats of the bone colour, we're going to switch to Cassandora Yellow. 1 coat of this over everything. This will do recess shading, but it will also give everything a yellow tint. And then I'm going to go back to Screaming Skull. I'm going to thin it down, and I'm going to apply a couple of thin layer highlights, picking out the raised details. On the character art, on his character card, he does have some interesting detailing on his tunic. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not too keen on doing a lot of freehand artistic flourishes like that. So we're just going to pick out raised details. With that done, we're going to move on to the leggings. And I wanted blue leggings, but I didn't want them to be a really brilliant blue, so I've gone for a wolf grey, which is a grey-blue colour. And this will require 2 coats. I guess if you're using Games Workshop paints, something like Fenrisian grey is what you would go for. And then those leggings will get a coat of Nuln Oil. That will just tone down the colour and again provide that recess shading. And then I'm going to go back to Wolf Grey, and I'm going to thin this down a lot, and I'm going to apply a couple of layers over the most raised details on the legs, just to revive the colours, bring out the highlights, brighten up the areas where light would most naturally fall, so the tops of the legs and the knees, and just give everything a little bit more depth. We're now going to deal with the cloak and the gloves, and we're starting with Mephiston Red. But we're not going to do red exactly for the cloak and the gloves. I want a kind of burgundy leather colour. But Mephiston is our base coat to work from. I'm now going to apply purple tone over the gloves and the cape. This will obviously help to define all of the recesses and all of the details, but it will also give the items of clothing a purple hue. And then when that's dry, I'm going to mix Mephiston Red with Alien Purple to try and create a nice rich burgundy colour. And we're going to start layering this up. And what I'm doing here is I'm applying it over the raised details of the cloak and the gloves. And I'm going to apply a couple of coats of this, and each application I will focus a little bit more towards the most raised parts, so we get a gradual gradation of colour. And then I'm going to add a drop of pink horror, and I'm going to do the same thing again. So with each application we're focusing more on the highest points of the cloak. And then I will add another drop of pink horror for a final highlight, just on the tops of the ridges of the cape and on the fingers of the gloves, and that will finish that. I'm now going to move on to the boots and the staff, and also his belt. We're using Mournfang Brown for this, 2 thin coats for good coverage. I could have done his boots in the same burgundy colour as the gauntlets and the cape, but I thought that was going a little bit too far with the court jester look, so he's gone for a more traditional brown travelling boot. And then we're switching to Balthazar Gold, and we're going to paint the top of the staff. We're going to paint the headgear, the headband. There's a ring on his raised hand. There's also his belt buckle and the clasps on his cape. And then of course, Agrac's Earthshade will go over the brown and the gold. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my gosh, he's almost run out of Agrac's Earthshade there. But don't worry, I have another 2 bottles of it. Never run out of Agrac's Earthshade. I'm now going back to Mournfang Brown, and we're just going to use that over the brown areas on the most exposed parts to brighten the colour back up, to do some edge highlighting on the boots, and just so the finished thing doesn't look too murky. We're then going to do the same thing with the Balthazar Gold. We're just going to dot it on the most raised parts of the headband, the clasps, the ring, and the top of the staff. And now it's time to deal with the eyes. I'm using Pallid Witch Flesh. I've thinned this a little bit. I'm using an Insane Detail brush, and I'm just going to carefully dot a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh into each eye recess. And then I'm switching to Abaddon Black, and I have this crazy long brush with a very, very fine point, and I'm just going to dot Abaddon Black into each eye. And that will finish the whole thing, apart from, of course, the base. And there he is, completely finished. The base I'm not going to paint in this video because I have a completely separate video for painting HeroQuest bases, which you can check out. So that's it for this particular video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.